Born to Achieve. Born to Achieve. Welcome to Born to Achieve podcast, the show that inspires and motivates you to unlock your full potential and achieve your goals. With your host, Warren Andrew Pinder. Let's get started on this week's episode of Born to Achieve. Born to Achieve.
I am born to achieve greatness, and so are you. On today's episode of the Born to Achieve Greatness podcast, we are joined with Camille Henry and Dr. George Ashley. She is a professor and program coordinator of early childhood education at Sheridan College in Ontario, Canada. For over 20 years, she's worked with children and families not only in classrooms, but in her own home, where she opens her doors as a foster parent to 15 children, nurturing their growth, resilience, and hope. She's also the CEO and co-founder of Strengthened Hands and the co-author of 10 children's books designed to empower young minds. At the heart of all her work is one mission: to affirm children, build their confidence, and help them overcome challenges, especially in the wake of COVID, when so many have struggled with social and emotional growth. Camille believes in that greatness is planted early, and she has dedicated her life to making sure those seeds grow strong. We welcome you, Camille, to the Born to Achieve podcast. I must say, it's truly impressive.
Thank you.
Okay, and next we have with us is rare that we have Dr. George Ashley, who is a professor of social work at Eastern Kentucky University in Richmond, Kentucky. Dr. Ashley has worked as a social work practitioner and fostered parents with children from K-9 for over 30 years. Dr. Ashley also serves as a consultant workshop facilitator and group coach for anti-racism, equality, diversity, and inclusion, education with children, welfare, and schools. His research interests includes race relations, parenting, and human sexuality. He has authored numerous articles and magazines, both in scholarly journals and popular magazines, and served as a co-editor for several books. Welcome, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you.
So we are here today. Our audience should be able to gain access to so much 30, 20 years of working with our young kids. Oftentimes we don't talk with a lot about framing and shaping the minds of our young persons. But we have two experts here today that will help us with that. So the question to both of you, what was it that made you become intrigued and passionate about your work toward shaping the minds of our young ones?
Sure. Right, Camila, want me to take that one?
Yes, George, you do that so
I want to hear it from both of you. That's
Right.
it.
First of all, you should know that Camille is my sister-in-law, right? And so we have a strong friendship. And so over the years, I know Camille most of my life, right? But I did not, sometimes you know somebody, but you don't know somebody, right? In terms of just what's happening. And as family members, sometimes we just talk about family things. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. But COVID sort of slowed us down, right? And allowed us a chance to just actually connect and talk about issues. And I remember this specific moment when she shared something that was taking place with her son. Right. So sometimes little things, a little spark begins with small things. A fire begins with little small things. It was her son. Right. And some of the issues that he had been facing in school because of the color of his skin. And, it sort of broke both our hearts just listening to what was transpiring, because he had not shared this before. Right. And this started us on the journey to talking about what we could possibly do to address this. And that we started with it's right behind me, our first article, right, that's what started this journey. We thought, let's write something that will help elementary classroom teachers deal with the issue of race, because it's something that little kids, right, are going to ask about, right? And that was the initial spark. So her son is the founding by one point in terms of getting this thing going and getting us to delve into a variety of different issues, right? And this is our first article, as I said, from there.
Great. That's great. That's impressive. And you, Camille?
Yeah, and as George is saying, what we were doing is from the article, we were invited to conferences to do presentations. George is downplaying his role, but he's very much instrumental in the connections that he has in social work departments and organizations and universities throughout the United States. And so when we presented our research in terms of what we have in understanding race relations and how children's concepts and understanding of race, as young as infancy, children recognize differences in skin tone and color and so forth. And when we started having these discussions with social workers, they said, we really want to hear more. So we were invited in, and really strengthened hands developed from those conversations that we were having with individuals and saying they need more. Like, do you have resources? And so we were like, I don't have anything yet. And then I said, okay, you know what? We're going into these spaces and we're having these conversations. They need resources in order to enhance the conversations with young children, whether it be a parent, an educator, or a social worker. So it was really sitting down, and I know it sounds like 10 children's books. Yes, 10, but we actually did it pretty much. Like, I think we did 6 books in one summer, and just one after the other, and really growing from the experience. There was always one in the works, but it was just, oh, we'll do this later. I don't know. And then it was just really instrumental in saying, we really need to do this now. And from the I guess the response from the community really was, do you have more? And we were like, what? So it's just like George said, sometimes when we have something, it starts off as a little spark, but ours really blew up into this big fire, as you can say, in terms of the needs of the community right away. And so it was almost like we were playing catch up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really exciting experience. I must say it's a lot of work, and we're jumping into new spaces that we haven't really been in before, but it's nice to know that we're in it together. Sometimes when you're doing businesses and so forth, it could be a little overwhelming if you're doing everything all on your own, but it's nice to know that you have somebody to bounce off of. And so I'm coming from a field of early childhood education, as you said in my introduction, and George coming from social work. Sometimes people would see them as almost two opposing type of areas, but it's very much in terms of the growth of children and their development all the way from infancy. And because of George's experience, we can go all the way to like high school age in terms of really understanding the depth and breadth of what's going on with young children.
Excellent. So the impact of it, has it been accepted as something controversial or something productive?
I think it's a little bit of both. George, if you want to go ahead and begin, I'll
Sure.
pick up.
Sure. Number one, if you're meeting a need, right, then there isn't really much of a controversy, right? Because
Right.
a lot of the time they are asking us for this, right?
Correct.
They're saying, can you give this? Can you provide this? Right. So there is a need, right? And so if there's a need, then we have been able to supply that particular need. So the
Right.
controversy, and I realize, down here in the United States, things are a little bit different in terms of what's the political climate that's
Exactly.
here right now. However,
Exactly.
the need still exists, right? In
Correct.
terms of things that, especially when you're dealing with stress, when you're dealing with issues that children face on a day basis, and sometimes people just don't know what to do. Right.
Mhm.
Just because you are an educator and you've been trained, it doesn't necessarily mean that and you're trained and you're teaching in a school or in a daycare, et cetera. It doesn't necessarily mean that you always know how to handle situations, right? So we're basically meeting a need. That's how it comes down to.
I absolutely agree with that. My thing is, a lot of what when you're talking about kids, there's a thin line of ignorance that
Mm.
that steps into their environment, right? That the environment they come from can literally portray, and that they don't know what right from wrong. So the need where that you're speaking of, to catch that at an early age is so important, that that you realize that skin color doesn't matter. It's the things that come from the heart that you're teaching them. And you guys have both, from listening to both of you, from an early childhood perspective and social work, that is something that really impacts. When I said the impact that is made, all right, that's at such an early, it makes for a better character of persons. So I can only imagine that you have more to write. Tell us something. Tell us about a few of the book. Tell us some information. Give us some, share with our audience of what are the information that's in your books.
Well, I can show a few, and then really branching off that idea that you're saying, in terms of how we have expanded. I think what we initially started off with was the topic of race relations, and how do we talk about this topic of race with young children, and really letting educators and parents know children can understand and recognize. They even have biased behavior as young as toddlerhood in terms of race. And when we were having these conversations, sometimes people were really surprised and, like you said, wanted to know more. So this culminated actually into a textbook that, as much as we have the children's books, which don't worry, I'll get there. But
Yeah.
let's just share, George, if you can, he had the textbook in his hand. And so we actually partnered with other authors, and we have this like 50, I think it's like 10 or 15 chapters of conversations of race, and looking at it from different lenses, because I think it's really important that when we're talking about this issue, we're not only thinking of it just from our own unique perspective. The topic of race and who is involved when we're even thinking about race impacts so many other people. And so what we did was really take the time of inviting other authors to be in the space. Yes, George and I did edit the book and put things together, but very much so the voices of others. And I'll let George speak to a little bit about the textbook. Then I'll come back and share about those children's books for sure.
Yeah, as we talked about the topic originally, right, in terms of race, we did the article, but the idea came that we need to go bigger and broader with this, right? Because that you're just dealing with it from the children's perspective. Let's see if we can get something together, because especially in the climate that we're living, right, today, can we get something together that would effectively, because you notice that our nation is very polarized here, right? And so what can we do? Because people need to talk, right? Issues are not going to be resolved unless people talk. So can we create a document or something that will enable them to facilitate, educators to facilitate conversation on this particular topic during this particular turbulent time that we're in, right? So that we can have discussions, not pointing fingers, right, and looking at the issues. And that's where the idea of this textbook came by, right? And so this is hot off the press, right? Just produced in March, right? And it is a book that can be used by anyone. The primary audience is for social workers, right? But it can be easily applied to any field, right? Or even just for any normal reader who wants to find out more about race relations and how to address some of the issues, right? And so what I like about this, because it's the first of its kind, is that it has a number of insightful areas, chapters, has a variety of really, really interesting chapters that goes from slavery to what's happening in rural America, child welfare, education, the political climate that we're in the United States, right? And naming some of the individuals and talking about how we go about dealing with them. There's a variety of different topics that can relate to just about anyone. And then there are a lot of resources that come with this in the book itself. There are videos, right? Other additional readings that can help educators who are trying to figure out how can I address this with children or other students, right? Or just for myself and my family, right? And so very, very powerful book. And in addition, if you adopt the book for educators, there are also faculty resources that come with the book to help cement the concepts for individuals who are teaching this in their courses. So this is very powerful. And even though we're the editors, make no mistake, our footprint is in this throughout this book.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining today's podcast. We'll be right back.
Achieve Man, written by Warren Andrew Pinder and Dominique Bradford. This book passionately focuses on the challenges women have been made to go through and how to overcome them. In some cultures, being a woman disadvantages the girl child. This book carefully exposes the hurdles you might face. This masterpiece is the ultimate self-help guide for women. It reveals your true purpose and identity. Get your copy today. Available from Amazon.
We now return to today's podcast.
A very powerful book written by two very powerful persons, right? As you were speaking, Dr. Ashley, I'm just thinking that's a book that really a conversation piece around the dinner table. Because persons are not that we don't think about what you're describing in that book. We tend to turn a blind eye and live our lives as if it does not affect us. But in actuality, it truly does, because in terms of status and so forth, we can call it out. We can literally call it out and know that there are some things that are, diversity and race and is relevant. The truth is actually in the moment. What we're speaking of is actually in the moment. So with that said, right? With that said, social workers, like persons, do they realize that besides the environment that they're in, that they find themselves in, helping to get out of it? This is a tool, to me, as you were speaking, that can be used. That they get to a point of understanding purpose.
Yes.
How did I get here? How did I get here? And then,
as a matter of fact,
help me get out.
One of the things I want to just cut in here for a second. One of the key chapters in the book is just dealing with biases. Right. We all have biases, and we need them in terms of to be able to shape and operate in our world. That's just how it is. Right. But it's when they come out of kilter. Right.
Yes.
And so one of the second chapter in this book deals with bias. Right. And understanding how it works, and then figuring out what our own biases, because we all have biases. Doesn't matter who you are. Right?
Definitely.
And being able to navigate that situation. Right. So once you understand what they are, then what do I do with that? Right. How can I address that? Right. Because that's at the heart of the problem, bias.
But let me ask you, all right. So dwell into that just for a minute, so that our listening viewing audience, just dwell into that 1 minute of bias. What hurdles you create for yourself with your self-bias.
So let's talk about how it's even created, right? Because it's our environment and the way in which we're raised, we're grown, right? What we have received access to or don't have access to, right? Everything shapes us individually, right? And so when we go out into the world, we go out with our past in terms of how we're raised, what we've been exposed to, what we haven't been exposed to, right? And especially our parents, those caregivers who play such a essential role in our lives. So all starts, when you're really, really small, right? As little kids, right? And what you've been fed into our brains, and you see things, right? And that's why you'll see that sometimes it's so difficult for people to move out of that. It's possible when you have the wrong biases, right? But it's possible, but it's so ingrained within us. You've been told something over and over again. And this goes for all groups, by the way, right?
Yeah.
It's not just one particular group, right? And so, but the main thing is that you can overcome it if it's going in the wrong direction. Once you become cognizant of this, right? So we're trying to say, take a look at yourself in this book. Here are some resources if you find that you're over here or you're over there, right? I've used this already with students, right? And it's interesting to hear their comments. I didn't realize, students that may not look like me, right? I didn't realize I was like this. I had no idea this. I never saw this particular group like this, right? And it's not only race, but biases in other areas too, right? Because when you think about diversity, it's a broad field, right? Ageism, right? In terms of how they view people who are older, right? That's another bias, right? Because a lot of our young people do not see them as being able to think, right, or perceive, right, do things just and achieve at high levels. That's the
Yes.
thought pattern, right? So it's a very broad thing, right? So that's what we've been able to do with this.
All right, Camille, I can't wait to hear from you. Let me hear what this chime in here.
I was just going to say that sometimes when we have the concept of bias, there's implicit and explicit bias. So, implicit bias are things that we might not even be aware that we're doing, as George was explaining with some of the students that might not even be defined as a person of color, for example, and not recognizing that their movements or even their decision making process or who they give privilege to and who they don't have give access to, they might not even be aware that they're doing it. Explicit mean is a bias is that you're more conscious that you're doing it and you're aware. So the things that we are aware of, we can do something about. But it's nice to have people that are close and connected to us that can actually say, hey, you know what? I noticed you said this, or I noticed you're doing this. Because sometimes there's things that we're doing that we're not even aware of. And you need to have really a circle of people around you that can give you those supports. Sometimes when we're having these conversations, we also recognize that people didn't know how to talk about it with children. And so one of our books, which I have over here, which is Melanin, and just give me a moment, because we also made the same book in English and we also made it in Spanish and we also have it in French, right? And so one of the things that we recognized was that people didn't know how to talk about the melanin in our skin. I was saying it with our students and they were like, what's that? They didn't know that what melanin is. And to me, I just thought it's such a basic concept. But then thinking back, it's not necessarily something that my mom sat me down and specifically talked to me about. It was just kind of move through the motions. This is your color and so on. But what is giving me the color within my skin? And so I think it was really having those conversations and bringing about an opportunity where you can do this in a way that doesn't look necessarily tokenistic, but is an invitation to conversation. When we look at the creation of our book, Melanin in Me, one of the things that we did also in the back was that we gave information about what is melanin. Sorry, it's not necessarily facing in the screen. And we also, in some of our children's books, we also have activities. So the idea that once the book is closed, now you have something that you can continue on with in terms of the discussion and the experience. And the other unique thing that we did with all our books is that we also have a connection to handmade crochet elements. George, I don't know if you had some there. I know mine are a little bit further away, which invite me to jump up. So even just things like that's a handmade crochet doll. And it might be like, why would you use a handmade crochet piece? It's really to touch on those children's emotions, to really let them know that you are uniquely made. So are crochet pieces, right? They're not necessarily exactly alike. So that's our kind of crochet representation of our melanin doll, and really to tell them this is something special. It's the idea of the connection of the messages that are found at the pages of our book of empowerment and empathy and self-compassion that sometimes goes off to the wayside and we don't necessarily discuss it. Well, we invite that discussion in our book, and when the book is closed, you have that crochet element to remember the message.
Let me this is interesting, right? Let me be the devil's advocate.
Mm-hmm. Bring it
right?
on.
Yeah, let me be the devil's advocate. We're here. You know what you just said? Like in a major way, right? In a major way. We are creatures of what we're taught, right? As kids. And we could be going on a path. You can imagine us just going on a path, thinking that all is good, that it's all right. And we want to tap into our greatness and not understand. We don't understand yet that we have to become open to everything that you just said. And if it's too late, that bias that Dr. Ashley spoke about is entrenched. And we begin our decision, our trend, our decision to certain things. We close doors that can actually be the stepping stone to us becoming the persons that we truly should be.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You're sharing that, and I'm thinking in like some of my classes in terms of things that students have shared with me in terms of this where I teach is predominantly white.
Right.
Right.
Wow. So yeah. Gotcha.
Overwhelming predominantly white. I'm the only faculty member that looks like this.
Yes.
Right? And so, but I'm very open with the students in terms of sharing because I want them to understand. Right. And so when we talk on as a part of our curriculum, this is a part of what we deal with. Right? And it's very, very interesting to hear some of the things that students are saying who come from a specific environment in terms of how they were raised, but then how they are willing to overcome that and address things in a different way. Because it doesn't mean that you have to see it that way, even though people in my family do. Right. And so when you're talking about overcoming and being able to look at things in a different way, right? Education does help. It's a major factor. And also for some of our students, I remember one student telling me this was their first time because of where you're living, right? In Kentucky, right? You can imagine that in your mind, right? There's rural areas. Some of them don't even see people that look like us. Right. And so this is their first time being exposed to that in a university environment where you're seeing a number of people that look different and different types of cultures and different types of groups. Right. And that in itself can be overwhelming because, again, someone said this to me, all you've seen is what you see on TV, what you see in the media. And so you take that with you, even as an adult coming to a university, you take that information with you, and then you come into this setting, and that's what you believe, right? And what you've been told in the past. And then it takes a lot of effort, right? It's possible, but effort to overcome those stereotypes, right? That you see.
Dr. Ashley, you're very important. One by one, student by student, to be able to turn that narrative to helping them understand, that it's not by choice. Basically, it's not by choice, but a lot of times the environment or the hand that's dealt that that we're faced with these challenges. And speaking of challenges, what for you overcoming them yourselves in this field? What are the challenges that you found that you come up against?
Camille, go ahead. I'll jump in.
That's a big question, Warren, because I think the journey of myself in early childhood education, really, to be open and honest, there's not a lot of Black female educators in my field. There's a lot of early childhood educators who are working on the floor and have their diploma, but as you go higher up in education, it's very minimal. And I was just speaking to somebody about this a couple weeks ago, and they were saying, like, how do you connect? We need to connect with more people, right? One of the things, so race does have an influence, as George is saying. If you've only been exposed and only have access to what you see portrayed on TV, sometimes when you're moving up in ranks or having these conversations, people are just seeing you with that type of perception. So I'm very conscious of that. Some of the things that we've written about within our children's books and definitely within the chapters of the textbook are things that we have personally experienced. And so areas of bullying, areas of, even trying to be like somebody else in order to fit in. These are things that I experienced as a child growing up, but it's so surprising to see that this is still happening for our young people today. It hasn't disappeared. We may have been, a little bit more crafty in terms of how we state it, or we put it in a box or so on and kind of push it to the corner. But it's very much what children are experiencing today. And I'm not just saying that, but I'm actually in schools, sitting down with children in childcare centers and hearing personally what they've experienced. And I think what you mentioned, Warren, it is the idea of having an open mind. It's not easy. it's not easy. And I really do value the importance of building relationships, even in our role as professors. It's really, how do we create a space where this is a reciprocal learning experience for all the students that come in?
Yes.
I teach 45 students in one class easily. So I have over 200 students a semester. And
Right.
so it really is, I want this to be a space where you're comfortable to learn. And you can't learn if you have, if you're closed minded, if you're not receptive to the
Exactly.
information.
Exactly.
So within the first few weeks of my classes, it's really about, how do we cultivate a relationship? What is it that you're looking for? What are your expectations? How can your voice be present within this classroom space? And the unique thing that we offer at Strength Enhance is that we don't just talk to educators, we talk to educators, social workers, parents, and we do workshops for children. So it's a full scale so that we can really hear the voices. The value that we have is our experience. So we've lived this with
Mhm.
one. So we're coming from a lived experience. We share from that lens. And so our experiences and examples that we give are probably our yesterdays, right? And so it's very important that people find us relatable, that we're approachable. We're not
Mhm.
here to say we have all the answers and you have to do
No.
say, but it's very much so about, this is what we tried. This is what we learned, and this is what research is telling us. What do you think? Right. And coming from that invites, and it's right there, the invitation to learn. And I
You know,
think people, that invitation, then they're
yeah.
more receptive to open the door to say,
Yeah.
okay, look what you have.
Let's get into your books now. I'm into this. Let's get into these books that you've written to actually help this space, right? Let's speak to that. You go and let our audience know
Okay. Which would you like to know about? The different types of books
the
that we've got?
different types of books, yeah, that you have used to actually assist with actually answering these questions. These are pertinent questions to really, changing lives of many persons.
All right.
So
I'm going to speak about one specific book. I'm trying to get it here, right? And get my books out here.
mhm.
The ABCs of Affirmation.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Go ahead.
And one of our best-selling books is this particular book. What we found is that people, and it's a very simple book, right? It's for younger children, right? And what we found is that, when people are trying to help children learn how to read and learn their alphabets, etc., right? We know A is for apple. We're trying to see if we can actually, A is not going to be for apple. A is going to be for something interesting. In this case, it's for I am appreciated, right?
Wow.
And in this book, you'll see a lot of diversity, right? And it goes through the
Yes.
entire alphabet, right? And then in it, you'll see there's a lot of different types of pictures that can be used for engaging conversations,
Yes.
right? Right. That's our book, ABCs of Affirmation, and it has like I said, it's filled with diversity, right? With
Definitely.
things, because kids like pictures, they like to see, they like to talk, they like to think,
Mm.
right? So it's more than just a book. This is a very, very powerful book. I remember one person who bought this book and actually set up we were just looking randomly, right? And they set up something. They say they met us at a conference and they wanted to say how impressed they were by our books, right? And they put up a little channel, a little internet video on our
Yeah.
books. Asked them. I
Super.
thought it was fascinating, right?
Super,
That's
man.
right. Camille, let's take turns in terms of talking about some of our books.
Yeah. So, I mean, as George was saying, we have some wordless books such as Nevaeh, the hairless polar bear, and it really talks about issues that involves loss. I think sometimes people don't think that children, it's all happy and rainbow and sunshine all the time, but there are things that children actually go through with us. And so it's really
Totally
talking
right.
about the impact of what loss experiences. And you go through, and it's a wordless book intentionally to invite children to actually tell us about what they see within the pictures. And so it's a polar bear that slowly starts to lose her hair, in the process of losing her hair, she loses her confidence and what's happening with that, right?
Mm.
So it invites them to create the wording. George spoke a little bit earlier on in terms of the diversity that's found within our book. One of the things that we wanted to do was also to create books that allow children to not be so stuck on words. So, for example, children who have dyslexia or other exceptionalities, sometimes being stuck on what the word says and the meaning, it doesn't really invite them in. And what we wanted to do was invite them to create the story, what they think is happening. And it could actually change each time you read the book. Our books are for children ages 3 to 10, our children's books. So we have some fun ones like the goat and the rhyming of words. It's really something. Farm animals is really the first sounds that children kind of go through. Then we also touch on Mina's gift, which is a mimic octopus who's trying to be like everybody else in the ocean. And that idea is almost like imposter syndrome for children in the sense of, try not to be like others, but stand on the uniqueness that's found within you. Tahira the turtle is really also about, really think a turtle is slow and moving, and sometimes that's not necessarily appreciated. We as human beings, and especially in North American culture, we want things done yesterday. Did you do it? It's fast. Somebody asks a question and we need to give the response like this.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so even within Indigenous culture, there's the invitation of reflection, to take some time, to go slow. It's not always about it being in a fast pace. Children that have exceptionalities, neurodiversity, and so forth, the idea that you can take time, think things through. I always say to George, sometimes he's asking me something and I'm like, I need a second just to process this for a moment.
Just to get it.
Because it's always like we need to do things so quickly. But it's a matter of really respecting the voices of children and recognize that it's okay to move a little bit slower. Our book sometimes, I feel, really talks about the feelings and emotions, and recognizing that the way that we might interpret or feel a certain way in English culture is not just like isolated just for us. It's also expressed in different languages too. So we intentionally put French and Spanish on there so that children can see the wordings and learn how to express their emotions in different ways. The idea of expressing our emotions sometimes is not necessarily appreciated and valued. There's certain emotions that you can express. So happy is always great, but what if you're mad? What if you're sad? What if you're confused? Those are emotions too. And I think what happened as a result of COVID is that we weren't seeing faces. People were just presenting the great and wonderful stuff online during social media, but we weren't talking about the difficulties that we're necessarily experiencing. And now that we're kind of post-COVID, we're now having children that have high mental health and anxiety, that are challenged in terms of their behavior. We're hearing teachers say that I don't know what to do. And that's what's happened, is because we didn't have those social and emotional outlets in part of our development. We've skipped that. And now we have children in our schools that are struggling. And so that's what we're really trying to do, is help. And when you said, Warren, we're making a difference, I think that's the motivation that keeps us going each and every day for doing what we're doing. I mean, both George and I, we have our full-time jobs as professors, and then we're still here doing this, writing our children's books and going out to communities, facilitating workshops and sharing our experiences with children, parents, social workers, and educators, because we really have a passion and believe that this is something that needs to be out there in our community, and our community is telling us just that we need you.
Certainly. That is your greatness. That is truly your greatness.
Do you mind if we just add a couple other books? There's some.
Sure. Go ahead.
Journey Back to You, Camille, in front of me.
Yeah, Journey Back to You was saying is another book that's of loss, and that one also called Culminates. It's a little bit like the Nevaeh one, that we go through that journey. I don't know if you want to share more, George. Go ahead.
Sure. I'm not sure if you have the book, you can show it on the screen, right? But Journey Back to You is probably one of my favorite books because we don't talk about loss in children, right? And children go through different types of losses, right? It's not always just a person in terms of a person passing away, but just by even moving from one area to another, right? And that loss of friendships, right? And what it may be, what it may mean, right? So we've created a wordless book for that will help little children, right, and help educators themselves, right, guide these children from the understanding what loss is, right, and then how to deal with it effectively in this wordless book. And as Camille mentioned before, there are at the back of the book you'll have a guideline, right, that will help the educator, the parent, to direct that child through that discussion, so you're not left all alone. Sometimes, many books just write the story, but then what do you do afterwards? We've got the answer in terms of what you can do with it afterwards. The other thing I want to mention too is that the books are not just books, but we also have, for some of our books, we actually have facilitator guides that educators can use because you've read the book or you've got the activity. What else can we do with that book? So we've got facilitator guides that will help that educator or that parent through that experience. This is our anchor book, right? I call it our anchor book. Our first book, How is Peter Feeling? Right. And as Camille mentioned, kids go through all types of experiences, right? That, you hand them off to your teachers during the school day as a parent, but you're never really sure what takes place during that time between, say, 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, right? And all the different types of things that could be happening to your child during that period of time and its impact on them, right? And so this book is designed to help children explore the variety of different things that can happen to children, right? Even at school, right? And then how to deal with them in that sense. Because we all know things that are said to you sometimes, even in a school setting. I'm sure each one of you listening now can still remember some things that people have said to you as children, and it's still in your head, and you're wondering, why is that still in my head? Right? Because it was something that really hurt. Big feelings, when you have big feelings, they stay with you. So this book helps guide you through that.
Now for a commercial break.
Achieve Men, written by Warren Andrew Pinder. In this book, you will learn the 7 steps to achieving your dreams and goals. Given the vision to share how the acronym of the word achieve can be used systematically in your day-to-day life. Each of us is given a unique gift from God. Get your copy today. Available in print, ebook, and audiobook from Amazon.
We now return to today's podcast.
It's all about emotions, and emotions drive us. It really drives us, our feelings. So how do we get our communities behind us? How do we get the churches, civic organizations, families to understand that we can shape the future with presenting exactly what you're doing? You remember I said to you earlier about solving problems? It is a problem, right? We face that there is a problem for us understanding how we bring, because it's a competitive world and we're faced, let's just face it, black and white is equal if you want to survive. You have to look at it as trying to get in that space. Like you said, I commend you. You're the only black person of color, right, in your teaching what you teach at the university where you're in Kentucky. And it may sound shocking, but you're doing your part to actually help persons in that community to understand the importance of change and how do we get to work together. Now, how do we bring it back to the communities where we are, where the change needs to happen within, that it meets, that a synergy is built to make this world a better place, and we really achieve the greatness that we're supposed to. That's a loaded question.
It's a big question, but there's no one answer about it. One of the things that I would like to suggest is we as people of color, we also have to move into those spaces where people can be able to access us, right? And be able to be a part of that change. Right. We sometimes we just stay in one location, right? We're born, raised here, we stay and we never move. Just like the people that I've dealt with here, some of the students have said they've never ventured outside of their county.
Exactly.
Coming to that university was a first time experience, right? And so this is like, wow, I'm actually meeting somebody that looks different from me.
Right.
So the same thing is true. And a lot of things in terms of when you talk about your question in terms of how do we change, a lot of it has to do with relationships, right? We're not, as Camille said, we're not saying that we know everything, but we try to be relatable. We try to listen, right? We're trying to generally seek to understand what's happening for you, right? And to see how we can best help you, right? Earlier, you asked a question in terms of some of the challenges we faced, right? I think one of the things that makes Camille and myself unique is that we understand that we belong, right? I'm not coming there with some of my colleagues come with a lot of personal baggage into a situation. Our parents taught us right from the very beginning that we belong,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So how you
Exactly.
perceive yourself from the very beginning, right? Am
Man.
I timid because, I'm
Yeah.
going like this? No, I belong, right? And that was something that was drilled into us from the very beginning, right? And so when you see these challenges that come upon you, you're willing to just move into those spaces because you belong. You're part of the solution, right? And so,
I'm gonna call you George on that one, right? Because that's the word I was trying to, you know, that to teach a child at an early age that you belong. All right, own it. Own the space where you are. Just don't be timid. Don't be just take charge of your destiny in saying that I am. And how do you do that? You have to be open minded and engage in such dialogue, engage in understanding how someone else from another side thinks. And mesh it, understand it. No one is better than me. I
no,
I will get there. It may take a time. I will get there. And
no,
that's what I was thinking all along as we were dialoguing here.
Warren, early when I was in grade three, right? A teacher, it was a teacher, and this is a sad part. The teacher looked more like me than
Right.
right, right. And the teacher was telling me that I don't belong, right? They put me in the back of the class. I remember myself and another colleague, Carol, put us back in the back of the class, right? We're the only people of color, right? But because my parents and had instilled within me that we belong, that could have been crushing. But I went home and told my mom, I've been putting up my hand. She won't answer my question. All right, I want to answer the question. My mom came to the school. I'll never forget it. She set that teacher straight, but
Yeah.
because instilled in me that we belong. Now, both Camille and myself have also grown up in church, right? And so church has a big factor, right, in terms of who we are, right? And seeing positive role models, right, throughout our lives. Seeing many people listening to this are probably coming from single parent families. We were a single parent family, but I saw a lot of positive Black males in my life, right? Surrounded in my life, right? So you could see what it's like, right? And they could share what it's like, and you could see, and you could pattern. So those
Mhm.
things make a big difference in terms of who we are.
I'll tell you a story, right? Today, where I am, and I think many times it was a disservice to me because I was hyperactive or uh, mischievous and so forth. I was told I don't belong in the grade that I was in. And you hear that oftentimes. You begin to believe it.
Mm.
You know, but it wasn't until I found a desire to really, just that the drive within to help others and to be someone other, to be different, that I began to understand it. So what you are actually saying, the research that you guys are doing is so important at an early age for persons to really know that no one is better than me. I must achieve what I was born to be and
Hmm.
the greatness within, because we all have the gifts and talents given by God.
Hmm.
All right. And helping just to it's a simple conversation, It's simple because in a lot of little slick ways, right? You're told that you don't belong.
Hmm.
A lot of little ways. We're talking like let's just put it out there. It's talking, So man, I must say to both of you, the work that you are doing is creating the greatness within. This has been enlightening to say the least. Uh I encourage you both to continue because it's gonna soar to persons wanting to understand more about the work that you're doing. But I want you to give last words to our audience, both of you, to give last words to our listening audience today, and in words of inspiration and encouragement that they too may be inspired and encouraged.
I think thank you for saying that, Warren and Dominique, for giving us this opportunity. I think it's just fantastic. And one of the things I just want to say is that our work at Strength in Hands is, sometimes people are like, what is Strength in Hands? Are you trying to do muscle work for your hands? And I'm like, no, the name Strength in Hands is really about how can we be a hand of help to our community, and recognizing that we're strengthening community together with you. And I think one of the things that we want people to understand is that you're not alone. Think of us as resources that can enhance what you're already doing. I think as long as people are searching, and like you said, Warren, having an open mind, then you'll be surprised what things can kind of gravitate and come towards you. It's not seeing anybody as a deficit. And people might be doing things differently. That's okay. We're not all made to do things exactly the same. But it's how can we help to support you in your goals? How can we help to provide a hand to that? And having the opportunity to do that is what motivates us to keep on going. And so just keep on doing the work you're doing, as big and small as it is. You might be surprised that somebody comes back to you later in life and says what difference that you made. So I'm always encouraging people to keep on trying and don't give up.
And for me, I like what Camille said in terms of our role, Strength in Hands. We're not trying to say we have all the answers, but we can together collectively be able to move forward, right? That's why we have the hands, right? We can all collectively move forward to what we're seeking to do. And there are different types of needs that exist within our world, right? One of the things that we like doing is figuring out what is it that what a challenge that you're facing, right? As it relates to children, right? Within your organization, right? And then being able to assist you, right? In terms of meeting that particular challenge, right? Because it's there. Listen to some of your staff members. We listen to what they're saying, right? Because oftentimes it's not necessarily in the book or in an article, right? Because it's cutting edge stuff, what's happening on the ground, and things are changing on a day-to-day basis. So being able to provide them with resources, solutions, and help the workers, staff who are dealing with children, because if we can help them, we're going to also help the children.
Yes.
Right. So we're trying to address this from a number of different factors. We work with the actual children, right, themselves. We do workshops with children. They're fun, engaging. We also work with parents. We've done a number of different types of parenting workshops. Then we're working with educators, right? And then we're working also with the child welfare. So we're trying to address this in multiple areas to meet the needs.
That's commendable. That's commendable. Thank you both for sharing this with our audience and being a part of this episode of the Born to Achieve Greatness podcast. We look forward to and we shall follow you. As man, before you go, you have some social handles that you want to put out in case some of our audience may have questions or want to reach you guys?
Sure. Camille?
Yes, we have our website, which is www.strengthenhands, STRENGTHEN, hands.com. And we also have our Instagram, which we post information and provide free advice and let you know where we're going to be. And that is Strength in Hands. And the logo is our Melanin and Me book that's here. And then we also have a YouTube channel that has resources for young children, like instrumental music that can help them go to sleep, and even some ideas that are coming from our children's books. And that's at strengthenhands.edu.
Thank you. It's been great having you both on the Born to Achieve Greatness podcast.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Born to Achieve. We hope you found it informative, inspiring, and motivating. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family. Stay focused on your goals, and we'll see you on the next episode of Born to Achieve.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Born to Achieve Greatness. And to all the students going back to school on the upcoming semester, please keep in mind that education is one of the key pillars to success. So don't forget to study hard, do your absolute best, find time to rest, and also remember that you are in fact born to achieve greatness.